The Toronto Raptors season opener is in the books, and it really could not have gone much worse than it did. And there's just two things about the game that I cannot get over, and I'll discuss them in today's video. Let's get into it. Welcome back to Amateur Sports, the YouTube channel completely dedicated to Toronto Raptors content. And when I say the home opener could not have gone much worse for the Raptors, it never has gone worse in the history of the Toronto Raptors franchise. This was the worst home opener, or at least the worst margin of defeat in a home opener in franchise history. And it was also the worst opening night loss, whether home or away, in Raptors franchise history. The Raptors marked the 30th anniversary of the franchise, the start of the 30th season, with a 30-point loss to the Cleveland Cavaliers. Again, at home in front of their own fans, 136-106. Yes, we understand this team has injuries. Yes, we understand that we are not as good as the Cleveland Cavaliers, but down by 20 at half, losing by 30 in your home opener, we know this team isn't going to be amazing, but surely this team needs to be better than this. And there were a couple of things throughout the game that really bugged me, and it's something that the Raptors absolutely need to fix for the rest of the 81 games. I'm not expecting a playoff appearance. I am expecting a somewhat competitive team that is working on development, and to get those things out of the season, these two things need to change. First of all, when it comes to the coaching and it comes to the lineups, it's unfortunate that we're starting a season with the same mistakes that plagued the Raptors throughout last season. Once again, I understand there's certain limitations of what the Raptors coaching staff can do with these lineups, especially when the four guys coming off the bench primarily for your team are Jamal Shead, Davion Mitchell, Chris Boucher, and Bruno Fernando. To a lesser degree as well, Jonathan Mobile got some minutes in there, but that was really the main group they wanted to use as the backup, the main group they wanted as part of the second unit that was out there. But the issue is, like, this is the modern NBA. You don't need to just put out an entire bench lineup for guys. You don't need to put out four bench players at once. And if you've been following the channel for a while, you know how much I hated this last season. But there's just this absolute insistence from the Raptors coaching staff to use four bench players at once. You have Scotty Barnes with four bench players. It just doesn't make any sense. The Raptors bench is not very good, and the Raptors bench really lacks floor spacing and shooters. So why would you put all of those players on the floor together? The Raptors started this game really well. I think out the gate, Darko Rajakovic's schemes were on point. I think the way he laid it out defensively, he got it right, using Scotty Barnes as a help defense for off of Evan Mobley. That made sense. That was the right play. And the Raptors were up 7 pretty early. I believe it was 27-20 for the Raptors. And then the bench rolled in. Bruno Fernando cannot shoot. Chris Boucher had a really good shooting night, but I wouldn't classify him as a shooter. What I would classify as a shooter is, are you getting chased off the three-point line? Is there a hard closeout when you're shooting a three? I like Chris Boucher the way he's playing this season and in preseason, but can't call him a shooter based on that criteria. Davion Mitchell, Jamal Shead, good defenders, not shooters. Not guys you're chasing off the line, and relatively ineffective offensively in general. I know Jamal Shead had a good game, but you can have good games with guys like Boucher and Shead, but the lineup as a whole there, those four guys with Scotty Barnes, there's such a lack of floor spacing that a team, especially like the Cavaliers, who have two fantastic interior defenders in Evan Mobley and Jared Allen, can park in the paint. And it's just so obvious that that's what they're going to do in those lineups, and even they're going to go to a zone. It's so obvious that's what's going to happen. I don't understand how the coaching staff didn't process that before the game. A slight adjustment was made in the second half to try and rectify that, but at that point, the game was gone. They were down by 20 at half, and it was all thanks to the run that began when the bench lineups came in. I understand there's issues with the personnel on the bench. You're asking right now, potentially, you're asking me, what is he supposed to do with those types of players? Well, you stagger those minutes. You don't need to play four of them at once. What you can do instead is, you obviously want Barnes in with the second unit. I understand that. But Emmanuel Quickley should also be in with the second unit, or even Grady Dick should be in with the second unit. You can get away with just having Emmanuel Quickley in the starting five there. You've got Abaji, who at least can somewhat be a threat from the outside. He's a non-shooter, but at least has somewhat of a shot. Emmanuel Quickley's absolutely a shooter. Grady Dick is absolutely a shooter. You've got more potential there to space the floor with the starting lineups if you filter in, let's say, a Davion Mitchell as the point guard into what would be, part of the starting unit, and have Emmanuel quickly getting some of those second unit minutes with Barnes, and then you'd have Boucher, who's shooting all of a sudden is a lot more usable because he's not one of the main threats from the outside. I don't know if Bruno Fernando should play at all, so that's a completely different conversation. You can get away with that a lot more, and you have more of Jamal Shedd's ability as a point guard and a point of attack defender in through there. So immediately what needs to be fixed, and I went through 82 games of it last year, so I know it's not going to be fixed, but immediately, there is going to be more bench problems. Even when the team is healthy, there are going to be bench problems when Darko filters through a 4+1 lineup, when 4 bench players are all on the floor at the same time with 1 starter. You don't have to do that. It's 2024, almost 2025. You don't have to do that. You can play 3 of them at once with 2 starters. That would be my max, especially when there's such a significant drop-off in the quality of players in the Raptors starting 5 compared to the players that are coming off of the bench. But another thing that really irked me about this game was, unfortunately, the play of Scottie Barnes. Now, preface this because, again, don't yell at me. Scottie Barnes is fantastic. Well worth the rookie max contract that the Toronto Raptors provided him. He's going to have what I would believe to be a fantastic season. Great player. I love having Scottie Barnes in Toronto. This game was not fantastic, and I can, forgive a player when he's not playing particularly well, but I'll say it again, what I've always said about any player. What you can control is your effort, your demeanor, your aggression. So even when you're not playing well, at least you can have that. The Raptors were down by 30 points in the third quarter, and Jamal Shead is still hustling, hounding players defensively. Scottie Barnes, it was apparent very early to myself, to the people in the chat during my watch along for this game, to people on social media. It was very apparent to everybody that Scottie Barnes was not on it yesterday, which is strange considering it's the home opener. You should be really ready to go for the season, but we're past this point, I think, with him where we can have these games. You talk about it being just one game. You could talk about him being a young player. He's learning all of that, but I'm kind of past that. This is his 4th season, and he's now the franchise player for this team. He is the face of the franchise. There needs to be a better example set for the rest of the team. Darko Rajakovic in preseason said specifically this: if you have your franchise player picking up full court and playing defense, that rubs the right way with everyone else. The same goes in the opposite direction. If your franchise player is making a sloppy turn and not running back, getting blown by way too easily on defense, that also in turn rubs off on your team. Like Darko said as well, he sets the standard for the entire group. Well, there needs to be a much better standard set in terms of effort than what we got out of the first game. And listen, I'm sure this will improve. There were a lot of times last season where there was a game like this and he came out super aggressive the next game and was fantastic. And I would completely expect that to happen against the 76ers team that is lacking in the big department with Joel Embiid out injured. But again, for this season, not like trying to overly criticize Scottie Barnes, but you can't watch that game and not notice the things that I'm pointing out here. At this stage, with the amount of money that he's about to get paid, with his role towards the franchise, the face of the franchise, your franchise player, as Darko Rajakovic himself has put it, in his 4th season now, you can no longer have this sort of game where you question his demeanor on the floor. Those games just can't happen. Can he have a 3 of 14 game where the shot just isn't falling? Absolutely. Everybody's bound to have a game like that from time to time, but not a game where you question the total effort. So obviously a lot of stuff for the Raptors to work on here in terms of the lineups, the rotations. I don't expect that to change at all. I expect that to be the same and be a frustrating point of emphasis for myself throughout the entire season. As for Scottie Barnes, I think that this is going to solve it. This is going to be solved. But again, it's not like these games can happen from time to time. This game, this type of game, this type of demeanor performance at this point in Scottie Barnes' career, he's thrusted into this massive role with the Raptors. This sort of game just cannot happen And I really hope it doesn't, because when Scottie Barnes is engaged, is aggressive, and is leading by example with those fantastic intangibles that he has, he seems unstoppable. So it's just confusing why we can't get that more often than we do. So hopefully he makes it something that happens a lot more often this season, and the Raptors can put together a much better season than the way things have started here. It is just one game. I understand that, not pushing the panic button, not freaking out. The comments on this video are going to be, I think, an absolute disaster. It's just one game, yes, but these are some things. Look, point them out early, solve them early, and they won't be prolonged. That's all it is. Raptors, I'm still thinking 32-ish wins this season. My God, they got to get healthy, though. What do you make of the stuff I pointed out in today's video? Again, this is going to be a war zone in the comments, but that's all for me for today. Drop a like if you enjoyed. Subscribe to the channel for more Raptors content, and I will see you again next time for another video.